I'm going to give a brief recap. I was last here approximately 5.5 months ago, if you could believe that, to give a presentation with our code enforcement officer, Husto, on some proposed property maintenance code updates that we were seeking to help us deal with some very commonly complained about issues around town. So, as you can see on the left, initial presentation was April 3rd. Just to refresh everyone's memory, the topics that were covered during that presentation involved our code enforcement procedures. Currently, we do not have any formal procedures codified in town code, and we're looking to really capture our official process in the town code, which I will get into a little bit further detail. One new element that I will also elaborate further on the presentation is a particular section in our building construction chapter. Also on-street parking restrictions, storage of vehicles on private property, and then a provision that deals with portable storage containers, roll-off dumpsters, and dumpster bags. So the original plan was, we didn't anticipate this length of time going by in between the initial presentation and the request to hold the public hearing. But as often happens when you start peeling back codes, they're often linked to other sections of code, and you want to make sure that you're not basically creating things that conflict with one another. So it was a larger effort than we had originally anticipated, and there was a lot of work done internally with the staff of my department, as well as legal advice from our town attorney. So I do appreciate all the assistance that we've had so far. So just to recap, the code enforcement procedures that we're looking to be having inserted into our town code as a new chapter. Basically, the complaint begins basically by receiving some correspondence from residents, either through phone, walk-ins to town hall, emails, etc., and of course, staff observations. So when we become aware of a potential code violation, we do a site inspection to confirm if the reported violation is in fact rising to the level of a violation. If we do confirm that we believe a violation exists, then the official process begins, which is really 4 steps. It starts with a initial correspondence that we refer to as a violation letter, just alerting the property owner that we've been made aware of a potential violation, and asking them to give us a call to work out a plan to help resolve it. The majority of folks do respond to that initial reach out, and by and large, we are able to achieve compliance voluntarily. For those that do not respond, after approximately a week to 10 days, we send out another correspondence that we refer to as a notice and order. The language is a little bit stronger, and it contains a particular date, with reasonable time given that we expect it to be remedied. If we haven't heard from a property owner after that step, we then go to an appearance ticket that gets served to the property owner, and that essentially summons them to an upcoming court date where the matter will be presented before the town judge. The piece of from our building construction, chapter 119, involves the issuance of temporary certificates of occupancy. For those that may not be familiar with that term, a temporary C of O allows for occupancy of a building or structure prior to all of the project components being 100% complete. Now, obviously, the bare minimum requirements of fire and life safety, fire prevention systems, mandatory ingress and egress routes, those are all still required, even under a temporary C of O. They are issued on rare occasions for good cause only. I think in the last 5.5 years, we've had one request for a temporary C of O. But what we found when comparing our code to other like-sized towns is that our code requires the town board to approve a temporary certificate of occupancy, and it's only good for a period of 30 days. So as I mentioned, we did an analysis of actually all 19 towns in Monroe County and confirmed that we are the only one that requires town board approval. All of the other towns issue temporary C of Os administratively by either the code enforcement official or the building inspector. And by and large, most of them are good for a period of 6 months rather than 30 days. So in an attempt to bring our code more in line with common practice, the proposed change involving this chapter would have any request for a temporary certificate of occupancy to be administratively issued by the Commissioner of Public Works and the building inspector based upon their professional areas of expertise. Now, we currently don't have the title of Commissioner of Public Works, so there is a provision explaining in the event of the absence of that position, it would then require the unanimous approval of the different division heads that essentially make up the Department of Public Works. So a temporary C of O under this proposed code would be good for a period of 6 months, and it would only allow 1 3-month extension. There's some language in there that would require anyone requesting this to provide financial security to the town to ensure that there is timely completion of the project. They would also have to provide a list of items that are remaining to be complete with a firm timeline of when the completion is expected to take place. And then we added some language that if at any point during that temporary C of O period that a dangerous condition or a threat to public safety came about, that the town would have the ability to revoke or rescind that temporary C of O.
Josh, we're going to have a halftime on this, okay? Because there is a resolution to set a public hearing tonight, I'm going to make an executive decision so we can start the regular board meeting on time at 7:30. We're going to have you pick up the rest of this presentation before we vote on that public hearing. And we will allow at the 7:30 meeting.
Okay.
We will allow the town board members to ask questions.
All right, moving along to vehicle storage. So the proposed changes that we're bringing before the board have to do with the parking and storage of both what we like to call junk vehicles that are not registered or not operable, as well as recreational vehicles and commercial vehicles. And then in terms of on-street parking restrictions, we do get a good deal of complaints about people parking in the middle of cul-de-sacs. It presents a issue for emergency first responders, fire trucks, garbage trucks, etc. We have one instance where there's a resident who's parking a complete tractor trailer in the center of a cul-de-sac, which is hindering traffic for obviously the residents and visitors of those residents that live there. So the provision that we're proposing would deal with that. We currently have nothing that allows us to enforce for that type of issue. And then again, portable storage containers and roll-off dumpsters. The concern is that from time to time, these types of items remain on a property for a very great deal of time. And we do often get a lot of complaints from neighboring homeowners who complain of, the visual impact of these either bags being near the curb for several months or dumpsters that have debris and are there for extended long periods of time. So we're looking to tighten up the codes in relation to the amount of time and the placement on the property. So the next steps, the request here tonight is for the town board to set a resolution to hold a public hearing on these proposed changes. The proposed draft code in its entirety will be posted on the town's website so that the public has a chance to thoroughly read and review and understand prior to the proposed public hearing. And then we would look for any feedback or proposed concerns. If there weren't additional changes that would need to be made, and then we would like to move forward with making a decision on adopting them into town code. And ultimately what we're looking for is additional tools to help our staff in addressing common resident concerns and complaints that we don't currently have available to us. And I'll just leave off with, our number one goal is voluntary compliance. Again, we have a very good code enforcement officer that develops, good rapport with residents. We're willing to work with people and be very reasonable, but we do need these additional provisions to help us with those that just refuse to comply and negatively impact adjoining residents. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions or hear any feedback that you may have.
So Josh, I just want to say, number one, I appreciate the fact that you're updating the code. Some of these areas are most certainly needed. With respect to the temporary C of Os, you mentioned that we've done one in the last 5 years approximately. So what is the impetus to update this? Is there someone or some company or some person looking for a temporary C of O currently?
No, not at this time. But as I mentioned, whenever you try and tackle code updates, it tends to get quite cumbersome. I did think that particular provision was very odd when it came up for the U of R facility. That's the facility that requested it a couple of years ago. I think there's a potential for future businesses to request it, but I'd like to just get it more in line with other towns and eliminate any potential for political pressure that could be placed upon this board.
So I like the fact that you're taking the onus off the board with respect to this temporary C of Os. I think that's a great move, and you're putting it in with the building inspector. Where does the fire marshal fall into this as far as a temporary C of O goes?
Sure. So obviously the fire marshal is very intimately involved in not only inspections, but plan review. The way our code is structured currently and the way that it's outlined in the Department of Public Works, the fire marshal is not a department head. The building inspector is really the most qualified individual to make a determination. We did think it was important, though, to have an upper level. The building inspector is also not a department head. So the thought was having the building inspector be the primary evaluator of the request and also having support from their superior. Now, obviously, we have no commissioner of public works at this time.
Right.
So there is a provision that states that in the absence of that, it requires unanimous approval from all of the division heads that make up the Department of Public Works. So everyone has to be aligned. The highway superintendent has to be content with the grading. The engineer has to be content with the site and how, the site
Right.
work. And likewise, the fire marshal would obviously be involved in the review of any request. Because in order for us to even issue that temporary C of O, all of the fire safety related items have to be operable, inspected, and in place.
Great. So says requires financial security to the town by the applicant to ensure a timely project completion. Could you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, the concept, it's similar to like a letter of credit. So if there was a catastrophic failure of some sort and they were unable to finish the project, the town would have some sort of security to go in and hire someone to finish up whatever needs to be finished to, basically button it up.
Okay.
And then that cost could then be placed on a tax bill for recouping.
So I know you had mentioned that the temporary C of Os currently are 30 days in duration, is that correct?
Yes, it requires town board approval every 30 days. So they would have to essentially submit an application every 2 weeks.
Okay. And you came up with a 6-month
Yes.
by talking to other towns?
Yes. The majority of other towns offer provisions for TCOs. And yes, the majority of them all set it at a 6-month period.
So we said,
I don't want to, can I intervene on something here? And John, these are great questions. Tonight's resolution is to set a public hearing.
that's where I was going with my
So-
question.
Go ahead then.
So we're going to
Go
set a
ahead.
public hearing based upon this, correct? Subsequent to the public hearing, our input and input from those speakers that choose to address any of these issues, you would be open to making one or more changes to this code. Is that correct or no?
Yeah, the
Okay.
point of the public hearing is to get feedback and, hear what
That's
the public has to say.
Thank you.
And that's good. And I will say, one TCO, it was on a commercial project, a U of R facility. To me, most of this was driven by property maintenance, which we've been dealing with for 3 or 4 years. The TCO came up in a lot of ways because really they're on commercial projects. And we're trying to get ahead of certain things, and we're about to have what I think, it's going to be after I'm here, Xerox campus is going to be redeveloped. There's going to be 40, 50, 60-acre large industrial places coming in. Our TCO C of O process really is built around a house in a subdivision. That's just a fact.
Yep.
And so when we talked to the other towns and they said, this really is more, a TCO is more about a large commercial or industrial project. So that just gives some flavor to that. But like I said, tonight, I certainly don't want to short anybody because there will be robust conversation. My guess is on October 2nd, after the public hearing, we won't be voting on these changes. That would be my guess. There will be feedback and whatever. Any other questions or comments before we set the public hearing on this? From
I just
Jennifer,
have a
Patty, or
quick
Jen?
comment.
Sure.
In that many times we look at code changes in a reactionary way. We realize a problem is taking place and we go to our code book and nothing is addressed there. And we're kind of left hanging out there in midair. So I really appreciate the efforts that your department, Josh, you and your department have done to make this more of a planned implementation of needed code changes rather than being reactionary. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ginny?
Well, as long as it's not, voting on the actual resolution itself, which is, going for the public hearings, then.
You got it. Jennifer?
You answered my question. I was
Okay.
curious if it was commercial or residential, and it's more geared towards commercial.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it. Being proactive rather than reactive.